to the latest Centre Court MBA Festival with Poets and Quants. 2 days that are bursting with panels and interviews with the gatekeepers and the career makers. I feel very fortunate because Centre Court enables me to sit down with admissions directors and also the career services directors of the world's top business schools, and literally all over the world, as you'll see with today's first panel. My name is Matt Symonds, and with John Byrne, the editor of Poets and Quants, we co-host this event for the next 2 days. I write about business education for Forbes, the BBC. I used to write for The Economist and Bloomberg, and also very fortunate to work with lots of former admissions directors at Fortuna. The event really is to provide all of you with the insights and the guidance on your personal business school journey. And so I feel very fortunate to start with many old friends that have shared Centre Court with me and other events to get us started. Virginie Fougia. Virginie is the Global Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at Insead. It's always lovely to see you, Virginie. And you were saying that together we, in this case, together we belong, is the statement of the sort of diversity and inclusion that is a hallmark of the school.
Yes, exactly. Very, very true. Very well said, Matt. Hi, everyone. Happy to be with you on this panel and webinar.
And Sarah, you're in the office again, because of course we've done a few of these events. We've all been working remotely, which means that you're back on that beautiful campus in Jouy-en-Josas. Sarah is the Director of Marketing and Recruitment at HEC Paris, and perhaps starting to feel the freedom now of many people with their vaccine passes, and I guess students that are back on that lovely campus of yours.
Yeah, it's amazing. We welcome back. Every student had the option of starting online in case they had to, but actually yesterday, our final student for September intake arrived. So we welcomed them all on campus. We had some very safe events and we got to meet them all in person again. So it's been really, really an exciting fall so far.
Yeah, it must be one of the most wonderful moments, having read all these files and to actually then welcome everybody. Gulnara Rakishova, who is the Associate Director of Admissions at a fascinating program in KL, Malaysia, the Asia School of Business in partnership with MIT Sloan. So Gulnara, it's already late evening, but you've had another busy day. You've just welcomed your latest class. They arrived with you in August. Did everybody arrive?
Not yet. So Malaysia was in a lockdown, right? I mean, we had some restrictions in place, but and we started the program in an online format. However, in 2 weeks, finally, we're able to go back to campus and start having in-person component of the program. So which means most of the international students will be arriving in the next couple of weeks. There were also restrictions in terms of what kind of nationalities are able to come into the country because of the Delta variant. But Malaysia lifted those restrictions because the country is reaching to a really good percentage of people being vaccinated. So yeah, so we're excited that in a couple of weeks we'll be able to host our students on campus for the in-person classes.
Right, which of course back in Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts, HBS has had to interrupt having everyone on campus and go back to virtual formats, but that's not the case at the Rotterdam School of Management. And Brandon, of course, you're adding the finishing touches. Brandon Kirby, who is the Director of Marketing Admissions at RSM at the Erasmus University. And I guess, Brandon, your next class will be with you as we start the new year in January.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, we had our 5th round closed today, as a matter of fact. So we're still very much in the sort of throes of finishing off building the class for next year. It's been great to see the Netherlands and Europe open back up again, very similar to what we're experiencing, what France is experiencing. We're also seeing that in the Netherlands. So I think people are excited to get back out and to see the world, so to speak, with their education. So it's a great place to be. So we're working towards finishing off, and we're looking forward to welcoming everyone to campus in January.
Whenever I know that it's a deadline day, I think my heart takes an extra beat. But of course, for you guys, it's a calmer day. It's the applicants that have been busy meeting that 5 p.m. deadline. We expect all 4 of you, of course, to have this remarkable crystal ball that predicts the future of applications to a business school. But let's start maybe with looking back Virginie, as you look back over the last year and now, welcoming everybody, MBA, EMBA, Masters in Management students, take us through the last year. I mean, it's been very, very busy for your team.
Well, actually, the crystal ball is a little bit broken, at least since COVID started, because so very early on the process we said, so you can apply, and you can apply without the GMAT, and then we received thousands of applications, and then people were very happy to have been admitted, but then we're not able to travel, so we decided, we went from big class to very small class to another big one, so all my models and patterns are all broken. This is really interesting, and this is probably what kept me for so long in this higher education business, where it's never the same. It's always it's always changing and evolving. So the 22 J class, January, J stands for July, the graduating month, that started in the latest class in August 2021. We had a similar number, so kind of back to normal class size, with 69 different nationalities and people coming from 59 different countries prior to their MBAs. So a lot more, I would say, classic class profile than the last, I would say, 4 classes or 3 classes.
Right. And as you think about the sort of diversity and inclusion that we mentioned at the start, Wharton just brought in a class of 51% women. There had been a concern that perhaps, gender balance would be negatively impacted through the pandemic and an economic downturn. Have you managed to sort of keep that pipeline of talented young women that are applying to Insead's MBA program?
So we have, and it's actually a record number this year that we have managed to hit. So the way we look at it is, so when people say 51% or 49 or whatever, I always encourage people to look at the raw numbers. So it's not just a percentile of the class, and schools that have obviously large classes like ours with 500 students, when it comes to having 200 women in the class, it's a very, very solid number. And it's not just for the sake of having an additional woman in the class, it's for having a voice, it's for having the diversity of opinions and there's interesting exchanges. So that is very dear to Insead and to all of us in terms of diversity, gender, nationalities, previous sectors. This is really what is important, is the number of women you will have in the class, the number of different opinions and value sets, and this is really what matters. And also the company recruiting at Insead or in other schools will be looking for talent, so they will come to schools where they know they will have a large talent of female students to choose from.
Right, so 200, with the immediate network of their class, and then part of that wider Insead family. Sarah, you'd mentioned, in what's been a very, very busy year for the school, that you'd actually, pretty much admitted January's class early, so much so that you've had to extend. Tell us about the group that you've just admitted last month and those that'll be joining you in January.
So really proud of our September intake. This year with September and January, we'll also have 70 nationalities. So really, really proud of that diversity, but looking also at admitting more women, and the more women, the merrier, I guess. So we have lots of different initiatives to include them. I think what's great is we didn't really know when we were admitting students what would happen. We always have tried to keep our classes in person. We've done everything so that students can study safely in person, but some of the restrictions in terms of country entry, et cetera, made us have to have like a plan A, B, C. But what's great is that all students were able to come back for their second year and join in person now. So just really, really happy to see them all. They can do joint events. And I think there's a difference in these people coming in because they're so happy to be here because they didn't know if they'd be able to join. A great diverse class. COVID was terrible in many ways. Something that's good, though, is we saw more maybe diversity in professional function, industry. A lot of people thinking like, I need a change or having to change or just rethinking how they're going to work, rethinking digital. So that's pretty interesting. It allows us to provide even more variety to our classroom. So, from a professional athletes to somebody who's been working on the vaccine to someone who's working, as a veterinarian. And I always find that so exciting. And finally, to see them in person, to welcome them. We did a big outdoor event. That's just been really great. And January is going to be a little bit bigger than normal, just so that we could accommodate all the deferrals. We tried to be really open so that students who weren't sure, who really wanted to start in person, we allowed them to start a little later. This year will be slightly larger class, but really proud of the numbers across and everything that we have to offer, and that we're back like live.
No, it's very exciting. And Sarah raises a very interesting point, Gunnar. Perhaps if we go back just over a year, in that sort of uncertainty of the first months of the pandemic, lots of people said, well, I should rush and try to get to business school. But, Sarah talks about a longer term trend of those individuals really thinking about what they want and the sort of transition that the MBA provides as an opportunity. Are you seeing that in your applicants, people that have managed to get through the last year, but say, no, it really is time that I think about the next steps of my personal professional development, and Asia School of Business fits with those plans?
Yeah, for sure. I think this class was even more international than the previous class. So last year we had, I think, our largest MBA class, and plus on the top of that, we had quite a number of people deferring to this year. And this year we're still seeing the trend of people deferring just because, Malaysia was in the lockdown. But yes, absolutely. We were surprised actually knowing that we're going to be in year 2 of the pandemic. We kind of expected that the class probably is going to be more, less international, just because, borders were still closed. Some nationalities were, were not able to enter Malaysia, but still we ended up having the most international class, I think. That's exciting to see that people do see the value, right? In our program and being here in the region, and seeing as borders are opening up, which is happening over the past couple of weeks. There's definitely, we kind of expect that the next class is going to be bigger, because we also moved to our new campus. It's a very beautiful campus in the city of, in the heart of the Kuala Lumpur. That's really exciting.
When you think, Gulnur, about sort of how our international mobility has been impacted, maybe we're not going for a weekend with friends to another country, but when it comes to a year-long commitment of business school, do you think that changes the mindset and someone says, okay, Malaysia, here I come for the next year, and that underlying mobility is as enthusiastic and present as it's ever been?
I think yes, actually, when you think from the pandemic, from that perspective, that people been locked in their countries for a long time, right? So now they are looking for a change. They're looking for something, and a lot of them start reflecting that, I've been in my comfort zone, for example, I've been in my home region for such a long time, that now it's the time for me to explore something different. And I think for many of them, that's probably why, there's a trend in going very international. I see that many schools are saying that they're getting more international applicants just because of that, right? Going for different experiences, different opportunities, just because, being, and so certain is at the same time, being in one region might be easier for them to move around, right? When you are there versus staying in their home countries. Yeah.
Brandon, as you look forward to welcoming your next class, that sort of international diversity, perhaps 2 areas. Are you seeing applications from different parts of the world, but also what Sarah touched upon is people with veterinary science backgrounds, maybe different sort of industries and functions that are emerging? Are you seeing that greater sort of eclectic mix?
The short answer is yes. I think we've always had kind of a wide swath of people who are considering doing an MBA in general. We do a lot of when we're on the road or talking with students about kind of non-traditional backgrounds. I think as someone who did an MBA myself and who did have a non-traditional background, maybe I have a soft spot in my heart for people who maybe didn't go in whatever traditional means, but non-traditional is something that I think we definitely speak to. I think that what we're seeing, especially for the past 1.5 years, is people being willing to take more risks. And when you go through global crises, whether they be financial or in this case the pandemic, I think it does give people the moment to really reflect both on sort of themselves, their career, are they where they want to be? You sort of realign your values in a way about what really matters. And so I think that oftentimes we see people who maybe were sitting on the sidelines before, kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do an MBA or a MEM or any sort of continuing education, are now sort of getting this gentle, invisible push off of the sidelines and sort of, you know, jumping into the water. And I think that these big moments that happen, these inflection points, really allow for people to step back and self-reflect. And I think that you see this also in the cohorts that we're describing as well. I mean, doing an MBA is a lot about dealing with uncertainty. And, you know, obviously nothing has been greater over the past year and a half than the uncertainty around a lot of different things. So in short, yes, we're seeing applications coming from countries where historically we have yet to see applications, or people who are selecting to join us at RSM that maybe might have gone to other places in the past. So yeah, I would definitely say that we're seeing a greater amount of diversity, not only by the countries in which people apply, but also by the industry types, because this was really, the financial crisis affected everyone, but maybe not as deeply as the global pandemic. I mean, I think that was definitely much more of a shared experience in some ways. So it affected such a wider range of industries. And I think we're seeing that through the application volume that we have now.
Right. And just speaking to Virginie's point, you know, she said sometimes the percentages, you know, only can distort or don't tell the full story. When, you know, people are looking at business school and they look at perhaps, you know, what they imagine are typical profiles, they can maybe miss this idea of just how much room you have for that diversity. How do you sort of speak to people that, you know, don't come from banking, consulting, software engineering, many of those traditional feeders, and saying, you know what, there really is a place for you here?
Well, I mean, fundamentally at our core, I mean, we're here to educate people, right? I mean, that's sort of our job, is to help people become better versions of themselves without sounding too trite. And so I think the way a lot of us look at things is going beyond, you know, that you tick certain boxes for what your experience was afterwards, because a lot of the MBA is about outcomes. So oftentimes when I'm reviewing candidate profiles or having conversations with people, and there are exceptions to this rule, mind you, right? So if you want to go into consulting, there's probably a few things that would give you a leg up or a better chance of having that outcome after the program. So there are some exceptions, mind you. But in general, when I'm having those conversations, people who have a clear vision of where they want to be, that doesn't mean specifically the role and company and country, but they have an idea of where they want to be. I like those interesting profiles and those interesting backgrounds. I think it is critical for those candidates to highlight the relevance of those areas that maybe we might not know about. I mean, we talked before we got on the air about my experience in the restaurant business. And there's a lot of things I learned in the restaurant business I still apply now. But unless you've walked the shoes of being someone in the restaurant business, you're not going to know that. So it's always been sort of on me to sort of illustrate to other people, like, well, why did I learn a lot about business in the restaurant business? And I think it's the same thing for candidates that are coming from more non-traditional backgrounds, that you might have to work a little bit harder sometimes to get us to see why that really matters and how that's relevant both in a program and in the roles you're looking for after the program. But I definitely don't see it as a competitive disadvantage at all.
Right. As we think about diversity and inclusion in so many different ways, Virginie, and not just the gender balance, but, you know, in terms of people's backgrounds, experiences, you talk about the voices that they will bring to those classroom discussions. So as the gatekeeper at Insead, where do you start? What are the first things that you look at in an application, you know, to start to get a sense of that voice, that background, that experience that they're going to bring?
So that's within the application, but I would like to take one step backwards a little bit before diving into the application form, because this is also the school value. And this is also linked to how the school is run and the number of women or diversity on the board or teaching in the classroom. And then it comes down to us in admissions, kind of applying those values. Maybe some of you are familiar with the Insead Mission as a business as a force for good, where it is very important for us to understand what people will be willing to share with others during the experience of the MBA, but also after. So when it comes, and I'm narrowing down to the application form now, when it comes to looking at applicants' profile, we look at everything they have done from within their professional context to extracurricular activities and passion and hobbies, and this is all linked together and enabling us to understand who is the person behind the application form, and how is this person going to contribute in the classroom, in the discussions, within the different clubs, because we have all these different clubs. There are sector clubs like the finance club or the consulting clubs or the tech, but there are also others that like the Africa Club, where they do organize series of events. There is one tomorrow with, or this week, with the role of technology in enhancing healthcare in Africa. And this is together with transforming Africa's food system. And there is a number of webinars like this. So in the application form, we look at how can people contribute to those different webinars or activities or clubs, and have those enriching experiences. And that's through everything, from the videos to the essays, and we read through and we scan and we discover who is the person behind.
Virginie speaks, Sarah, to I mean, not just the classroom experience, and of course the intensity and academic rigor that will require, and how all of you will use GPA, GMAT or GRE to measure those different. But when thinking about beyond the classroom, all those clubs, all those tracks, activities that are taking place, is that one of the reasons that you involve alum at HEC Paris in the interview process? Because of course, you know, that they're aware of all of that energy and engagement that takes place beyond the classroom. And so is that giving you as an admissions office additional insight to that sense of belonging?
Definitely. So we can even scale it back further, because I think our admissions process is personalized from even before you meet the alumni. So we offer anyone who shares like just a bit of background, personal or group chat with us, so that we can get to know them, help them understand how to shine before they even do the application, so that we can talk about their background, understand them, and like really get to know them as a person. So there's a team of MBA marketing recruitment managers. They spend their days, they love getting to know people. So they spend their days like having video calls, in-person calls, and just understanding like, what are your goals? This is HEC, why HEC, et cetera. So they kind of have a bit of context that they provide at our pre-selection jury. So before you meet alumni, you have the chance, we all review the file. Of course, we review all the sort of technical things that we require, but we also have this information from the one-on-one, and the marketing recruitment manager's job is to make sure that they can help the candidate shine, help us see beyond what's just on paper, because it's kind of hard sometimes with so many competitors or people trying to get in to shine and show who you are. So we have this, and then we also, as you suggested and mentioned, and Insead has it too, we have our alumni do the interviews, and then they decide who gets into the program ultimately after kind of all the screening process. So they're looking for fit. Do they match the values of the school? Would you want this person in your class? Are they there to, you know, give back as well as to learn? And these are all really important. And yeah, so they have 2 alumni interviews, and even if we think the person's incredible, if both alumni say no, they can't get into the program. So sometimes this is disappointing for us and them, but we ultimately trust them. We feel that they are the best decision makers of who would be the best for the brand. So yeah.
You're shifting my perspective on who the gatekeepers really are, but
yeah, a combination.
So Virginie talked about the mission statement, sort of stepping back the institution, and in Insead's case being you know, business as a force for good. Gulnara, with colleagues Sean and others, he's often talked about a frontier mindset that goes hand in hand with someone that takes that step, joins the Asia School of Business in Kuala Lumpur. Now, how do you look for that? What, you know, as I start to think frontier mindset, what are you looking for?
Yeah, that's a very good one. So a lot of times when people think of like, you know, being in Asia, they think of like having expat life, right? I mean, being in Asia. In reality, because the heavy focus of the program is action learning, and students do projects with real businesses. And sometimes those businesses are located in the outskirts of the city. We even had like, a project in the jungle, right? I mean, sometimes students have to walk on the street collecting the data with a translator. So when we say frontier-minded, being on the ground, right? I mean, so one country in Southeast Asia may be very different from the other one. Like Myanmar is very emerging compared to Singapore, right? I mean, being in Ho Chi Minh or Vietnam is going to be very different from doing a project, let's say, in Phnom Penh. So this is like, what we say frontier-minded. Are you willing to take that risk, right? I mean, are you willing to be on the ground working with this company? Sometimes you are going to be sent on a project in, let's say, in manufacturing factory in Vietnam, where you will be working with people who sometimes do not speak English, right? I mean, so like, so the frontier-minded is not just like one concept, it's more of a lot of things that we take into account. And when it comes to like our applicants, I think like, of course, there has to be a reality check what you're signing up for. Because a lot of times you think of a business MBA program, right? I mean, wearing suits, right? I mean, sitting in the office, just like, having some negotiations with companies, but it's not what about us, right? I mean, it's on the ground experience, getting your hands dirty. So this is what we kind of define as a frontier-minded people. And are you willing to help these companies to scale, to grow, solve their business problems, right? I mean, and working with different people at the same time, because like, yes, your MBA classmates are going to be great, but sometimes the host company, the partners that you're going to be working with, as I said, like sometimes they do not speak English, they have different cultural perspectives, so if you're frontier-minded, you are able or willing, if you're not able, you will be able to, whether you're willing to learn how to like, navigate some of those conversations and, being able to work with these people.
Got it. And just staying with the theme of the mission statement at RSM as a force for positive change, Brandon, looking at a resume that might have bullet points that talked about increased sales by 15% or implemented a new dashboard software system. As you're trying to dig a little deeper, how are you then thinking as an admissions office in terms of that sense of force for positive change? Are there sort of either habits, patterns, behaviors that you might look to identify that sort of align and resonate with your team?
I think if we've done our job well in the admissions side of things, before someone submits their application, we've communicated to them the kind of things that we're looking for so that they can be sure to try to pull those things through in the application itself. I mean, oftentimes when we do panels and you hear, oh, how can I improve my chances? We talk about submitting a CV that is different perhaps than the CV you would use to apply for a job because you're trying to showcase and highlight different things. And while I think we all can recognize that if you're applying to multiple schools, that can be a lot of work, but to sort of alter and highlight different things, because what Insead is looking for is different than HEC, which is different than Asia School of Business. While there are some common themes, we all look ultimately for maybe some finer things that are different amongst each other. I think the critical thing goes back to being able to tell a good story and to really using the application process, again, as a moment of self-reflection. And if you know that in our marketing communications and our conversations that we have with people, that being a force for positive change is very big for us, that gives you the opportunity to go back and think, okay, well, what have I done in my life or my career that speaks to that? And if you're unable to update your CV or you don't want to, I think there are other opportunities where that can shine. That can come through in the essay, where we do ask, how have you been a force for positive change? So that's a pretty literal translation of how you can showcase that. But oftentimes I think that when applicants are putting their best foot forward, they often think for the big things like, oh, I increased sales by 37%, or I decreased revenue or decreased cost by this. That's great, but I think it's also the little things. It's, the things that you do when no one else is looking that speaks to your character. So when you're thinking about the impact that you have, for example, if you're teaching and helping children learn how to read, that might be 1 or 2 days a month that you're doing that. So you're thinking, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal, but you're teaching someone how to read, right? So the impact you're having on that individual is really, really big. Right. So we do challenge candidates sometimes who come to us with, how can I compete with someone who maybe worked at a nonprofit who was providing, water to an underprivileged area in a developing economy? Yes, that's great. And that is maybe affecting a lot of people, but you can be a force for positive change in the world around you. So there are different opportunities for that to happen through the conversations, through your CV, through the essays. I do think it's important for candidates to realize if you have the things you want us to know, you're given a lot of opportunity to be able to provide and showcase those things. We might ask you a question on your biggest failure. And so you might start automatically thinking about things in business, which that could be the case, but maybe it's something that can showcase a force for positive change through your failure. So it's all about the lens in which you put on your answers when you provide those things back. So oftentimes we give you a very specific box sometimes in which to fill your answers, but how you color in the lines is completely up to you. So I think that's a great way to think about whether it's force for positive change or anything else, how to sort of showcase to the school that, hey, I'm what you're looking for beyond just being a professional. Like, these are the things that will make me successful in the class, both as Sarah was saying, in providing and giving to those around me, but also receiving knowledge from others around me.
And it reminds me, Virginie, of how personalized the work is that you do. You receive thousands of applications. You're bringing in 500 students to the J class or to the D class, and yet it's everyone's individual and very unique story. How does that also then apply as you make decisions about scholarships and assessments that you're making? Is that distinct at Insead, or is it something that you're assessing as you're looking at each individual?
So it's totally separated. The scholarship allocation is dealt with by another team, still reporting to me, and we're working closely with the admissions team. But the idea is that what you have declared in the application form will not influence the decision on the scholarship. So if you need additional money, the fact that you have that profile or another profile will not influence the decision of the scholarship committee. So this is really the idea, is that it's separated. However, the scholarship committee will also look at the merit of the application. Hence, for example, the previous GPA or GMAT score in some occasions. It could be professional merit, so having achieved quicker, faster career progression. So this is though it is separated, some elements will be common. And so we look at the same type of diversity, and we aim to help as many people as we can. So it's roughly 30%, 32% in the latest intake that received a scholarship for an average amount of 20,000 euro. And our philosophy is really to help as many people as possible, rather than having a full, huge scholarship that will be a free ride. So that's the philosophy behind the scholarship allocation.
Got it. And with 4 rounds, is that a rolling process of assessment, or it sort of starts once you've completed round 2, or when do you start to think about scholarship?
So the first 3 rounds will be looked at solely individually, so round by round. The round 4 is a little bit risky if people heavily rely on scholarship. That round is too close to the start of the program to be able to have the full review. So I strongly encourage people who rely on scholarship to target the first 3 rounds to be able to benefit from the full package of opportunities. The round 4 is a little bit too short in terms of time frames and preparation. If you absolutely need a scholarship to be able to finance the program.
Right. Sarah, we started by talking about this wonderful moment, welcoming the new class. As we measure your success in the HEC Paris MBA Admissions Office, so we move forward perhaps 18 months, it could even be years, arguably, but you look at that class that have now completed the program, and it's like, yes, we knew that this was going to be a wonderful candidate. Perhaps they didn't have 30 points on the GMAT compared to our average, but when you just think about what you're looking for in candidates, retroactively looking back at the class, are there sort of characteristics that emerge from that?
I wish. I think everyone who I used to work in careers, and actually I look every year to see what happened to our students, because we want to do really responsible admissions, and we want to see, is there something that stands out? Can we admit a particular person who has XYZ? Does that mean they're going to end up achieving their dream, whether that's McKinsey, changing countries, etc.? It's really, really difficult to predict. You can have a candidate with the best school, the best CV, great interviews, who's not successful career-wise in what they were wanting, or you can have someone who completely surprises you. Yeah, it's a really tricky one. And I mean, I'm always looking for a thread. Kind of how we try to find that thread is we talk to recruiters regularly. So I try to survey some of them yearly to say, what are up and coming trends? What languages are you looking for? Are there soft skills that are, standing out? Because like right now, resilience is a big thing. That wasn't such a big thing before. Now some are looking for creativity. So we've had like some people who were in fashion get hired into tech companies. So Google or Amazon might be looking for a different profile. So we kind of try to stay current with recruitment trends, and we try to ask recruiters to predict. The interviews, I think, are a good prediction as well, because how you perform in a job interview is probably similar to how you perform. Can you create a connection? Because you have to go much further than your CV. So we kind of try to negate that part by testing these soft skills in these interviews. But unfortunately, it's really difficult to predict even, what industries will be hiring, because 3 years ago, we couldn't have predicted that like pharma would want everyone, anybody that had like a doctor, like anybody who graduated who was a doctor, or HR backgrounds are big right now. So yeah, it's pretty tough to predict. We do look at it, and we have changed in the past with the EMBA anyway. We've looked at our admissions questions to see, can we adapt our essay questions to make sure the person is more employable? So that's like something you can try to do. But I think just like with the many vast criteria that we measure, we hope that we have someone great. If they decide not to use career services, if they decide to sit back and just wait for the job to like rain on them, they're probably going to be less successful. So I would say for people out there looking to apply, you should be proactive in your career search, as well as all the support that the school will give you. But there's no like magic formula.
Yeah, there's our broken crystal ball again. Who would have predicted 3 years ago that pharma would have been hiring everybody? But when they're great, they're great. When they have the resilience that you're looking for, they will adapt and thrive in whatever next steps follow them. Sarah talks about soft skills, Gunnar. You often talk about, is it smarts and sharps? Am I getting that right? Sort of. What are those two skills that you're looking to develop in the program?
So that's a concept that we are taking at ASB. So smart skills are basically technical skills, right? Or hard skills. And smart skills are basically your soft skills, people skills, right? Are you able to work with other people? Are you a problem solver, right? What are your communication skills? Pretty much everything that we used to call soft, we're just thinking it's smart, because in reality, it's smart skills. Are you able to work with the others, right? Are you able to navigate some of those things? So soft, it's kind of making you, are you soft? Sometimes you're not that soft. You're just like, you're smart. So this was the framework that was developed by our associate dean, Loredana Padurian. So, and I think it's pretty much like changing the way we are assessing our candidates as well, trying to see the technical capabilities through the sharp skills versus how smart they are. And when we say smart, it's not in terms of the intellectual capabilities only, but also them being able to interact with the others. And then I really like what Sarah just mentioned, right? About having that assessment of people early enough. No, it's not possible, just because I think a lot of times when people come to an MBA program, quite often they don't even know what they want to do, right? Sometimes they say, hey, I want to have a career switch. I just don't want to do what I've been doing. But then at the end of the day, at least in our program, we have students working in different projects in different industries, different functional areas. And they kind of feel like, hey, I actually would like to go back to what I was doing before, just because this is where I shine. This is where I can sharpen my smart and sharp skills and kind of be the best version of myself.
Right. Brandon, you mentioned earlier, of course, the common characteristics that all of you top business schools share, but then the nuances, those sort of differentiators for each program. So if I was to sit down with 2 or 3 graduates of RSM's MBA program and ask them, what were 3 hallmarks of the experience that they had at the school, what do you think they would say?
As far as experiences that they had in the program itself?
Yes.
Yeah. I think one thing that they would definitely talk about is our approach to leadership development, and the amount of, I keep and you probably hear it in a lot of my answers because it is really part of what we offer, is that reflection. It is something that starts from the very beginning of the program and runs throughout the program. So it's something that they do both as individuals, but also as groups, and really being forced to ask to reflect and to think about who they are and who they want to be. So I think that that's definitely one thing. I think the second thing would be the consulting project that we have, where we bring in companies from the outside and you work kind of side by side over the span of a few weeks as a team with faculty coaches, but also working with people who are former consultants. Obviously, a lot of people who do an MBA, at least at the beginning of a program, are interested in consulting. I have to say that sometimes those minds and opinions are changed as they go throughout the program and they really learn about what it means to be a consultant if they don't really know that. So I think that that's another thing. And then, I think one thing, we are a smaller school. Our class size is usually between 130 to 150 students, which is then broken down into 3 cohorts. Something that I hear a lot from alums, and I'm not saying this is not the case at other schools, so please don't misread the comment, but the notion of how quickly they become a family. There have been one example, there's something called the MBAT, the MBA tournament, which is held at HEC, for example, which is one of the big calendar events of the year for MBA students in Europe, where quite a number of schools come together and compete across a wide variety of events, everything from sports activities to dancing to chess and everything in between. And RSM historically always won the Spirit Award, partly because we weren't any good at the other sports, I guess. So they had to give us, kind of the participation trophy, but they would give us the one around team spirit. And oftentimes when students would come back, students from other programs would talk about how together they seemed and how everyone was really a family. And I think that is something, I don't know if it's a Dutch value, but it's something that we're competitive, but we're not cutthroat. And I think that that's something that, especially now, is something that's really important for students as the generations change over, that, we can accomplish more together. And again, I'm not suggesting that any other school, especially on the call here, are any different, but it is something when we speak with our students, that notion of family and togetherness that happens quite quickly, because a lot of people, they're coming from around the world, sometimes for the first time being outside of their region, and you're plopped down in Rotterdam, of all places, with your family halfway around the world. So your support system and that ecosystem develops quite quickly. And so I think those are 3 things: the leadership development, the consulting project, but then the last kind of overarching thing would be the experience of the bonds in the family that tends to get created quite quickly when in the program.
And Virginie, of course, proficiency in discounted cash flow, preparing cases ready to land great positions at McKinsey, Bain, BCG, all opening up so many opportunities for graduates. But if you think of it in terms of that Insead experience, what do you think is the greatest impact? Is it something in the classroom, or is it the community, or something else?
So I did ask this question to a number of alumni, because this is always a mystery, and I'm not an alumni from the school myself, so I did ask this question. Yes, it's part of being part of this community. It's this idea that you can reach out to people, be for a trip in the country, or be for an advice in your next business venture. But this people are available to help each other from the moment the applicant is admitted, or even sometimes thinking about applying to Insead, reaching out to an alum saying, hey, what do you think I should be looking at? What do you recommend? What do you think are the school values? And from that minute, you have this impression of being part of the community, and to some extent, I also use this word, as Brendan said, the family. Even our class is larger, but I think you still have this strong bonds, and we make sure that there are, and we create situations and possibilities for people to really be there for each other, and also to grow together, because this is the only way you can grow, is by receiving feedback, sharing feedback in a benevolent way. So we also share all this. We teach or bring people to this, and having this sort of self-awareness that you can only have if you have received feedback, and this is how you come across, and this is what you should be looking at, and if you want to improve, and this sort of feedback and constructive, positive feedback. So we teach all this. So long answer, but yes, all linked to the community spirit.
And extending this idea of family, Sarah, in families, you know, there can be older sisters, younger brothers, crazy cousins. It's a wonderful mix over the holidays. But that's a little bit like business school too, right? Someone has written in and sort of said, well, perhaps, you know, I'm a few years older than the typical class average. Maybe someone's a couple of years younger. How do you sort of reassure them in terms of it's really what you've done with those years rather than a set number?
Yeah, we look at what they've done with the years, but we also look at their goals. So, for example, if you have 12 years of experience and you want to join a leadership program at Microsoft, that company, for example, has like a 6-year cutoff in terms of maximum years of experience for a full-time MBA. So typically we try to look at what are the goals. If you are looking to start a company or become an entrepreneur, if you join on the later side of the experience, it can be very valuable. You can full-time go to school, learn, try to get a partner. Also, the more experience you have, typically the more niche kind of your job offerings will be, and the more salary you're earning, so you're less open, or maybe you have a family, so you're less able to move geographically. So we kind of try to weigh all those factors and have like an honest conversation with the person. From time to time, if we have someone who has what we would say too much experience or goals that aren't aligned with the full-time MBA program, we'll give them a call and we can let them know that like the executive MBA could be an option. This could be a great option if you want to study part-time. Also, just for the exchanges that you have with your peers, if you've been managing a team for 10 years, a large team, it might be quite different than someone joining the MBA with an average of 6 years of experience. So we're just trying to align and make sure that the person applying, can get the right thing for them out of it. So it's not as easy as saying just what you have in the time that you've been working, because we definitely look at that for more junior candidates. If you've only worked at, one company for 2 years, is this the right moment? Might you want to get a little bit more experience doing X or Y? There's other people that have moved up super quickly in their company. They're just stars. They really need this next step. So yeah, it's so personal and so individual, and there's always a program. If you want to do an MBA, I would say it's never too late. So that's kind of the enlightening news. And it's just which one fits your goals so that you're not disappointed and you get exactly what you want out of the program.
Right. And one of our viewers has a PhD in life sciences, which would have taken many, many years, I guess, to complete. So you're also factoring in, well, again, they've taken this much time for studies. Maybe there was military service for some people. So again, you've said it, but it's very personal for each candidate.
Yes, definitely.
that's a resounding yes. So yeah. With everything that you've shared, how we can get in touch with you, and the hope that, as students back on campus, that actually welcoming and organizing campus visits becomes a reality. That's something I think people have really missed over the last 15, 18 months. Gunnar, what is your advice for someone that wants to find out more about ASB? Great ways to get in touch with you, with the growing network of alumni. What do you recommend?
I think reaching out, right, to students, to alums, and the admissions team, as Sarah pointed out earlier, right, we want to know our applicants, right? We want to know people who are applying to our program, who are considering our program. So we kind of navigate them throughout their journey, right? And see and give some recommendations on how to nail their application. We're pretty open, whether it's email, we have scheduled a call portal, so anyone can sign up to have a call with us. We are also able to assess their program feed. They can reach out to us through social media like LinkedIn. Same, our alums and students are pretty open. So if anyone reaches out to them saying, hey, can I have a talk to you about ASB, they're also willing to do that. If people want to have a conversation even with our dean, he's also like excited to talk to a high potential prospects, or like, people who have like been admitted to the program and they're just on the fence of deciding, this is whether it's the right move. So yeah, to reach out to schools, be open about your interests, right? I mean, and like, what are you hoping to get out of the conversation, whether it's like, just getting your questions answered. I think like having a strategy behind when you reach out to the school, like, not sending just a random message saying, hey, do you have scholarships? That's not the best thing to do, to send it to admissions directors. So it's more of a, like, sharing your story, and then asking like, so the person, right, I mean, who's on the other side of the screen, so they get to know you better, and then they're able to answer your questions and help you out in terms of, building your application.
Right. I guess all of you have growing FAQs that answer questions about the GMAT, the GRE, and the waivers that you offer. Brandon, you've always been a big international man of mystery, certainly a big traveler. Are you getting back out on the road and equally welcoming people to the Rotterdam campus in the coming year?
Yes and no. So I'm actually taking my first sort of trip outside of the Netherlands for business later this month. Actually, I'll be headed to Barcelona for an event there. Recruiting, I think, is still primarily being done for us more in a virtual sense. We do have some colleagues on the ground in different parts of the world who are still doing some light face-to-face events. We do expect this will probably be the case for a lot of the events in the spring of next year, but I think after the summer, I think things will be perhaps a little different. I think this is also down to the different approaches by each school, because each school has different resources on the ground in different places. So for us, we operate very centrally out of the Netherlands and out of Rotterdam. So as far as getting face-to-face, going out is just starting now to shift a little bit. As far as welcoming students onto campus, absolutely. The Dutch government within the past 2 weeks basically lifted nearly all of the restrictions around social distancing and face mask usage, at least on campuses. So the world is definitely sort of opening back up. We are definitely doing campus visits. We're doing our first in-person open day since February of 2020. That will be happening later on this month. So if anyone wants to hop a plane and come hang out in the evening at RSM and have a Heineken or two and talk a little bit about the program, we're happy to do that. The world has changed, and I think that schools now are also going to have to really ask themselves, especially the ones who might be like us, where they sort of operate centrally. If we truly want to be a force for positive change, does that mean that we need to hop on a big jumbo jet and fly halfway around the world to meet people? At the same time, I think it's also balancing, and this can vary by culture, the importance of looking someone in the eye and well, maybe we can't shake their hand anymore, but at least tapping elbows or fist bumping. To get an idea and a sense of who the school is. And I think that that's been one of the biggest challenges, both for schools and also for candidates, to truly get an idea of, who will I be joining, or in the case of the schools, who will we be admitting, because oftentimes, especially now, it has been almost entirely virtual. So the rules of the game in some ways have changed a little bit. And I think that sometimes for the better, and sometimes there's more challenges, but we'll start getting back out second part of next year. And yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be quite the international traveler as I was before, probably much to the happiness perhaps of my partner and my daughter. But yeah, the world is slowly getting back to whatever it was before, although it probably will never be quite the same, in a good way.
Whatever your travel, we're delighted that you make the time to join us at Centre Court. Virginie, just one final question as we wrap up this first panel, and viewers remember that we'll then take a shift and bring in the career services perspective in the next session in a few minutes' time. Virginie, we've talked a lot about schools, their personalities, their mission statements. You must have people that have stereotypes of the school. Oh, I thought that your school was this kind of place. Is the one stereotype that you would love to burst? One sort of misconception, and say, often people think this, here's the reality.
One of the big myths is that people need to speak French and to be fluent in French to come to to our campus. And no, the answer is no. You just need English to apply to Insead, basically. And then there will be a language policy which requires people to speak other languages, because this is part of the diversity. But I wish people knew that no, they don't need French, even more so if they were to study only in Singapore, since we have the two campuses, and Singapore is people can do their MBA, their one-year MBA in Singapore without traveling to Fontainebleau, to France, if they want to.
Bon, voilà, une très bonne nouvelle. But do learn French, everybody. It's one of the most beautiful
if you want to buy your bread downtown Fontainebleau.
I mean, with the languages that you collectively speak, I think it also speaks to, I guess, your personalities and that wonderful sort of cultural curiosity that seems to be at the heart of your work, and that leads to such wonderful decisions for the classes that you bring. Enjoy the new students that you're welcoming or that are about to show up. Virginie, Sarah, Gulnura and Brand, it's always lovely to see you. Your career services colleagues will be with us tomorrow at, 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. East Coast time. So what's that, about 3 o'clock UK time? But all four of you, thanks for a great admission session. And viewers, stay with us as we transition to the next panel in just a few minutes. Thanks, everybody.